Sometimes the most devastating truths don't scream, they whisper from crumpled paper, concealed in the folds of routine. In the quiet neighborhoods of Denver, where ranch-style homes stretched along peaceful tree-lined lanes, Sarah Whitman's life had always followed a predictable rhythm. Every morning, she'd wake before sunrise, prepare lunches for her children, Olivia and James, aged 9 and 7, and make sure Marcus's freshly ironed shirt and tie were ready for another day at his accounting firm. This particular Tuesday in early October seemed no different. As she moved through her morning routine, the soft autumn sun streamed through the kitchen windows while she packed ham sandwiches and carrot sticks. But sometimes the universe conspires to shatter our carefully constructed worlds in the most ordinary moments. The first sign came through a crumpled receipt that slipped from Marcus's blazer pocket as Sarah hung it in the laundry room. Les Jardins, a high-end French bistro downtown, $291.50 for dinner. Last Friday, the same Friday Marcus had claimed to be at the office reviewing a client's tax audit. Her hands trembled as she stared at the slip, remembering how he had called to apologize, his voice weary and distracted. "Mommy, can you help me finish my diorama?" Olivia's voice cut through her thoughts, snapping her back to the present. Sarah quickly tucked the receipt into her pocket, forcing a smile. "Of course, sweetie. Let me just finish with these shirts." Throughout the day, that receipt burned in her pocket like a live ember. She tried to stay focused on helping Olivia paint miniature animals, reviewing James's reading list, and the dozens of other tasks that filled her role as a stay-at-home mom, but her mind kept looping back to that figure. $291.15. Too much for a client dinner, too cozy for a casual meal. When Marcus didn't respond to her texts that afternoon, the tension in her chest tightened. By evening, as she served the kids their supper, chicken parmesan, Marcus's favorite, his usual spot at the table remained conspicuously vacant. No call, no explanation, just silence. "Where's Dad?" James asked, poking at his green beans. "Working late, honey. Big project," she replied. The lies came easier now, practiced after months of late nights and increasing distance. How long had she been smoothing over his absences? After tucking the kids into bed, Sarah sat alone in the dim kitchen, the receipt now wrinkled from being opened and folded too many times. Her laptop glowed faintly as she logged into their joint bank account, something she hadn't done in a while. She had always let Marcus handle the finances, while she kept the house running. The truth spilled across the screen in clear rows of charges: jewelry boutiques, luxury hotel bookings, fine dining spots she'd never heard of. The front door creaked open at 11:56 p.m. Marcus's footsteps, once steady and self-assured, now sounded uncertain. Sarah didn't move. She sat still, her back to the doorway as he hovered on the threshold. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm and unshaken. "Yes, we do." His response held a weight that made her heart sink. And when she finally turned around, the man standing there looked more like a stranger than the husband she had lived with for 13 years. His shirt was wrinkled, his typically well-groomed hair disordered, and his eyes, those calm hazel eyes that had once gazed at her with tenderness, now looked cold, detached, almost professional. "I'm leaving you." 3 words. 14 years of marriage, 2 children, countless shared memories, all collapsed into 3 words. "Her name is Danielle," he added, as if clarifying a point in a board meeting. "She's pregnant." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Sarah's feet as she clutched the edge of the kitchen island, her knuckles white against the marble. "Pregnant," she echoed, the word sharp and unfamiliar in her mouth, like something rotten. A nauseating chill coursed through her, as though every nerve in her body had recoiled at once. Her breath came short and shallow, the way it had once done during childbirth, only this time there was no miracle on the other side. Just destruction. Her mind, unbidden, filled with the memory of folding his shirts just days ago, of the kiss he'd placed on her cheek before leaving for work, the illusion of intimacy now unbearable. "I've already spoken with my attorney," Marcus continued. "You'll be taken care of. The house, child support, spousal payments, it will all be arranged fairly." Fairly. As if anything about this could ever be fair. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely audible. 8 months. He looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "It wasn't planned, Sar. It just happened." 8 months. While she'd been preparing their vow renewal dinner. while she'd been helping Olivia through her second-grade math struggles, while she'd been investing every bit of herself into their life, he had been building another. She tried to speak, but her mouth wouldn't form the words, only silence poured out. The betrayal didn't come in one sharp stab. It came in a flood of memories turned hollow. The anniversary she spent alone, the business trips that had grown more frequent, the distracted glances over dinner. She had excused it all as stress. She had excused him. "Get out." The words began as a whisper, then hardened. "Get out, Marcus." "Can we talk about this like adults?" he asked, holding up a hand. A sharp laugh burst from her chest. "You want adult? Fine, you have 30 minutes to pack what you need. The rest can wait until the lawyers sort it out. 30 minutes, Marcus. Starting now." He opened his mouth as if to protest, then seemed to reconsider. Without another word, he turned and walked upstairs. Sarah sat motionless, listening. The soft opening and closing of drawers, the muted thud of a suitcase being filled. Each sound another blow, another nail in the coffin of the life she thought they had. Exactly 29 minutes later, Marcus stood at the front door, his suitcase by his side. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. Sarah looked at him. This man she had once trusted with every piece of her heart. Now a stranger. One who had broken everything. "You lost the right to worry about hurting me the moment you started your new family while pretending to still be part of this one." The door clicked shut behind him, far too soft for the weight of what had just happened. Sarah remained standing in the foyer, listening to the car engine ignite, the crunch of tires on the stone driveway, the hum of it disappearing into the night. Only when the silence returned did she slide down the wall, her body racked by silent sobs. Upstairs, she heard the faint patter of Olivia's footsteps across the hardwood. "Mom?" Her daughter's voice floated down the staircase. "Is everything okay?" Sarah wiped her cheeks quickly and took a steadying breath. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." But nothing was fine. Her world had just shattered, leaving her alone with 2 children, a home, and the jagged pieces of her self-worth. Sitting there in the dark foyer, the last 14 years of her life replayed behind her eyes like a cruel slideshow. The degree she had abandoned to help build his career, the friends she'd lost, the ambitions she had shelved. Tomorrow, she would have to tell her children their father was gone. Tomorrow, she would have to figure out how to keep going. Tomorrow, she would have to be strong. But tonight, in the quiet stillness of her fractured home, Sarah Whitman allowed herself to mourn the life she thought she had, and the woman she'd lost along the way. She sat motionless on the floor, her back pressed to the wall, surrounded by shadows and silence. Not long ago, she had felt invisible. But at least then, she'd been someone's wife, someone's anchor. Now she wasn't sure what title she held anymore, other than tired. There was no dramatic collapse, just the slow, unbearable unraveling of everything she had once called home. As the first light of morning crept through the window, Sarah finally stood. Her legs were stiff, her eyes puffy, but something new stirred in her chest, a flicker of resolve, a faint burn of resistance. She walked to the kitchen and opened her laptop again, this time navigating to the University of Colorado's website. Her cursor lingered over the Apply Now button for several seconds before she finally clicked. It was time to reclaim the woman she had put on pause for far too long. 3 months after Marcus left, Sarah sat in her first college class in over a decade, her notebook blank in front of her. Around her, students barely out of their teens typed rapidly on lightweight laptops while she struggled to focus on the professor's voice lecturing about business fundamentals. Her thoughts kept drifting. James's tears that morning, missing his dad. Olivia's unusually quiet demeanor over breakfast. She glanced down at her notebook and realized she hadn't written a single word. Her pen hovered over the page, her mind paralyzed by a sudden wave of doubt. What was she doing here? She was older than most of the students by at least 15 years. Was this ambition or delusion? She could hear her own insecurity whispering, "You don't belong here. This isn't your world anymore." Her phone buzzed. The vibration made her flinch. Another message from Marcus's attorney about revisiting the custody agreement. She muted it without opening, forcing her attention back to the lecture. She'd worked too hard to reclaim this part of her life. He wasn't going to derail her again. And so, when we consider supply and demand, Professor Turner's voice trailed into the background as her phone lit up again. This time, her babysitter's name appeared. "Mrs. Whitman?" The professor called gently. "Is everything okay?" 20 sets of eyes turned toward her. Sarah's cheeks flushed. She gathered her things quickly. "I'm sorry. I have to go. It's my kids." The drive to James's elementary school felt painfully slow. Her 7-year-old had gotten sick in the middle of class and now sat pale and shaky in the nurse's office. Olivia would need to be picked up from her school in under an hour. Her carefully balanced schedule, the one she had so meticulously pieced together, was already falling apart, and it wasn't even noon. "Mommy, my tummy hurts," James whimpered from the back seat. "I know, sweetheart. We're almost home." Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror, noting the fatigue in her own face, the dark circles, the tension in her jaw. How long could she keep doing this? A flash of guilt hit her. Was she being selfish for wanting more? For chasing something beyond diapers and dinner prep? Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe structure was what the children needed. But then again, wasn't this structure too? A mother trying to build a better life for all of them? Her phone rang through the car's Bluetooth system. Marcus's name flashed across the dashboard screen. "Not now," she whispered, hitting decline. She didn't have the energy for another conversation about how her classes were interfering with the children's structure. After getting James settled on the couch with soup and a blanket, Sarah opened her laptop to go over the class materials she'd missed. The sight of her nearly empty bank account made her stomach turn. Marcus's first alimony check wasn't due for another week, and her part-time virtual assistant work barely kept food on the table. The pressure, single parenting, money, schoolwork, pressed against her chest until it felt impossible to breathe. Then the doorbell rang. She opened the door to find a man in a sharp navy suit standing on her porch. Early 40s, salt and pepper hair, perfectly pressed collar, everything about him suggested executive-level success. "Mrs. Whitman?" he asked, his voice calm and clear. "I'm Lucas Avery. I believe you've been handling some virtual assistant work for my company." Sarah's stomach dropped. Had she made a mistake in the reports? "Mr. Avery, please call me Lucas." His smile was easy and warm, with faint lines crinkling at the corners of his eyes. "I was just reviewing your work on our recent case files, and I have to say, your attention to detail is exceptional, especially the notes you added on how to simplify our document flow." A wave of relief washed over Sarah. "Oh, thank you. I just thought." A loud crash from inside the house cut her off, followed by James's crying. "I'm so sorry. My son's been sick, and Mommy!" James's voice rose, panicked. "Please excuse me," she said quickly, rushing inside. She found James in the living room, soup spilled across the rug, tears running down his flushed cheeks. "I tried to get water," he sobbed. "It's okay, baby." Sarah knelt, grabbing a roll of paper towels. She felt Lucas's presence nearby, hovering in the doorway, unsure. Not exactly how she imagined meeting the CEO of the company she freelanced for. "Let me help," Lucas offered, already rolling up his sleeves. Before she could object, he was picking up the bowl carefully as she cleaned James and the mess. "You really don't have to. I've got a nephew about his age," Lucas said with a calm efficiency. "Kids get sick. It happens. What doesn't usually happen is finding a virtual assistant who spots structural workflow issues while handling basic admin." Once James was back on the couch with a new bowl of soup, Lucas turned to Sarah. "That's actually why I came. We're opening a long-term position in our operations team. Based on your work, I'd like you to consider applying." Sarah stared at him, unsure she heard correctly. "I'm honored, but I've only just returned to school for my business degree. I don't think I'm qualified." "You've got real-world instincts and sharp thinking. The degree will follow," Lucas said, his tone measured and confident. "We offer tuition support for employees working toward their education." Sarah hesitated, torn between disbelief and the tiny flicker of hope that had been buried under months of exhaustion. No one had looked at her this way in a long time, not as a mother balancing chaos, not as a woman picking up the pieces, but as a professional, capable, valuable. Her throat tightened with the unfamiliar weight of being seen. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. Olivia's school. "I'm sorry, I need to pick up my daughter." "Of course," he said, pulling a card from his coat. "Think it over. The position allows remote work, flexible scheduling. We prioritize talent, Mrs. Whitman, whatever form it comes in. After he left, Sarah sat behind the wheel in the school pickup line, staring down at the business card. Lucas Avery's direct number was written on the back, alongside a handwritten note. Real potential shouldn't be wasted. That night, after both kids had gone to bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table. Bills spread out, textbooks open, her laptop blinking with the missed lecture. She picked up the business card again, her mind circling. The business card sat in front of her like a key to a door she hadn't even realized was there. Her phone lit up with another incoming call from Marcus. This time, she answered. "We need to talk about this school thing," he said immediately, skipping any greeting. "Danielle thinks." "Danielle's opinion," Sarah interrupted, surprising even herself with the steadiness in her voice, "stopped mattering the moment you chose her over this family. I'm doing this, Marcus. For me, for our children. The kids need stability, not a mom who's barely around because she's trying to relive her college years." "You know what they really need?" Sarah said, her voice still calm, though her pulse thudded in her throat. "They need to see what it looks like to get back up after life knocks you down. They need to believe it's never too late to go after your goals. And they need to understand that their mom is more than just someone's wife or ex-wife." Silence stretched across the line. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You've changed." "Yes," she replied. "I have." After ending the call, Sarah picked up Lucas Avery's card again. The corporate world intimidated her. She didn't have a degree yet. She had no formal business background, just 2 kids and a part-time virtual assistant gig. But as she glanced around her cluttered kitchen, the textbooks, the drawings taped to the fridge, the evidence of a life she was building, she realized fear wasn't new. She'd been terrified every day since Marcus walked out. And yet, she was still here. Still standing. What if she failed? The question had haunted her in quiet moments, during grocery store checkouts, while folding laundry at midnight, while staring at online assignments she didn't fully understand. There were days she came close to emailing the registrar and withdrawing from school. But then she'd think of Olivia's curiosity, James's questions, their little faces when she told them she was going back to school. She didn't want them to grow up thinking dreams had expiration dates. She opened her laptop and began drafting an email to Lucas. Whatever came next, she wasn't going to let fear make her choices anymore. It was time to see what she could really do. As she typed, a pop-up notification appeared on her screen. Her first B+ in business economics. A small win, but in this moment, it felt like a sign. Maybe she wasn't just surviving anymore. Maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to thrive. 6 months into her new role at Avery Group, Sarah stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her office, adjusting the collar of her blazer and taking a deep breath. In 20 minutes, she would present her findings on the company's internal processes at the quarterly operations meeting, her first major presentation since joining the team. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection, thinking of the late nights she'd spent preparing while Olivia and James slept. Her phone buzzed with a text from Madison, her new friend from the single-parent support group who had been watching the kids. "Dinner's done. Homework too. They're begging to wait up for you. Okay?" Guilt tugged at her, but she exhaled slowly. "Tell them just one story. Then bed. I'll kiss them when I get home." She gathered her notes, straightened her tablet, and turned as Lucas stepped into the doorway of her office. These days, his presence brought a flutter in her chest that had little to do with nerves. "Ready for the big moment?" he asked, his smile soft, his steel blue eyes bright. "As ready as I'll ever be," Sarah replied, gripping her tablet a little tighter. "I just hope the board doesn't mind being challenged by the newest team member. They'll appreciate solutions from someone who's bold enough to offer them," Lucas said, stepping farther into the room and quietly shutting the door behind him. "Sarah," he said, more serious now, "there's something I should tell you before we go in. Richard Crawford will be in the meeting." Her stomach clenched. "Richard Crawford?" Lucas nodded. His former business partner had just returned to Denver after several years overseas. Office chatter described him as brilliant, but cutthroat. A man who had been forced out under murky circumstances. "Why now?" she asked, catching the tightness in Lucas's jaw. "He's angling for a board seat. Says he wants to protect his remaining interests in the company." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, a rare show of frustration. Just be ready. Richard has a way of zeroing in on people's weaknesses and using them. His tone made Sarah uneasy, but it also stoked her fire. I've dealt with worse than a boardroom ego. Lucas's features softened. Yes, you have. He stepped closer, close enough that she caught a hint of his cologne, subtle and clean. Sarah, after the meeting, I was hoping maybe you'd... A knock at the door broke the moment. Mr. Avery, they're ready in the boardroom. Lucas took a step back, the warm light in his eyes shifting into professional cool. Shall we? The boardroom was imposing, all glass walls and skyline views stretching across downtown Denver. 12 pairs of eyes followed Sarah as she made her way to the front, including Richard Crawford's. He looked just like the internal company photos, somewhere in his 50s, with angular features and observant, cutting eyes. Sarah launched into her presentation. Her voice grew steadier with each slide as she broke down workflow bottlenecks, redundant procedures, and actionable improvements. Graphs and data backed every argument. She didn't stumble. But beneath the poise, her chest thrummed with tightly coiled nerves. Every word had to be perfect. Every click of the remote had to be flawless. She wasn't just defending a project. She was defending her place in a world that hadn't been built for someone like her. She could almost feel Crawford's eyes on her like a scalpel, dissecting everything from her resume to the way she held her pointer. In a room full of pedigreed executives, she carried the weight of being the exception. The outlier. Not just a woman, not just a newcomer, but a mother with no Ivy League background, no networked legacy, just grit. She told herself she belonged here, but part of her still feared they were waiting for her to prove otherwise. Impressive, Richard said smoothly, breaking the silence. Tell me, Mrs. Whitman, how does a former homemaker develop such sharp insight into corporate operations? The tension in the room was immediate. Lucas shifted in his seat, about to intervene, but Sarah answered first. The same way anyone does, Mr. Crawford. By paying attention, asking questions, and realizing that systems, whether they're managing household budgets or global departments, stand or fall based on adaptability and efficiency. Her tone didn't rise, but it cut through the space with quiet clarity. She had anticipated this, the subtle undermining, the emphasis on what she had been, rather than what she had become. But she stood her ground, anchored by every night she had studied while her children slept, by every day she had held them together while building something new for herself. And your relationship with our CEO, how much did that influence your fast-tracked position? The air chilled. She felt her stomach drop. Not because she was unprepared, but because the question struck at her deepest insecurity. That no matter how hard she worked, someone would always believe she hadn't earned it. That her presence here could be diminished to nothing more than proximity to power. Before she could respond, her phone screen lit up. Madison's name. Her chest tightened. Madison never called during working hours unless... Excuse me, she said quickly, stepping away. Family emergency. Nathan had taken a fall. Trying to impress Olivia with a cartwheel. Possible arm fracture. They were en route to the ER. The next few hours blurred by in a wash of antiseptic halls and tear-streaked cheeks. The X-ray confirmed a clean break. Painful, but manageable. Throughout it all, Sarah's phone buzzed with messages from Lucas. Is your son okay? Don't worry about the meeting. Crawford was out of line. At midnight, with Nathan finally resting beside her in a recliner chair, cast and all, she looked at Lucas's last message again and allowed herself one brief breath of relief. Finally asleep in his own bed, his small arm wrapped in a bright blue cast, Sarah sat out on her back porch. The spring air held a whisper of warmth, change on the horizon. Her laptop glowed beside her, notifications piling up, follow-ups from the disrupted presentation and a formal complaint from Richard Crawford citing unprofessional conduct. A soft knock on the front door startled her. Lucas stood there, his tie loosened, holding a paper bag. I figured you probably skipped dinner, he said gently. Hospital food is notoriously bad. That simple act of kindness cracked something in her. The tears she'd been swallowing all day finally broke free. Hey, Lucas said softly, setting the bag down and pulling her into a hug. James is going to be fine. Kids bounce back fast. It's not just that, Sarah murmured, stepping back to wipe her eyes. Crawford was right. I'm in over my head, trying to be everything. A professional, a student, a mom, and failing at all of it. "Look at me," Lucas said, his voice low but resolute. "You gave an exceptional presentation today. You're holding a 3.8 GPA, and you just spent 6 hours making sure your son got the care he needed. That's not failure, that's resilience." Their eyes locked. Something shifted in the space between them. His hand still rested on her arm. The warmth of his touch moved through her like reassurance. "I should go," he said quietly, but didn't move. "Yes," she whispered, stepping a little closer. The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable. Soft at first, then fuller, months of unspoken emotion rushing forward. Sarah leaned into it, letting herself feel what it meant to be seen, to be truly understood. A car door slammed somewhere nearby, breaking the spell. They pulled apart, breath-catching. "I'm sorry," Lucas started, backing away slightly. "I shouldn't have." "Don't." Sarah touched his arm. "Don't apologize, but I need time. The kids, the job, the degree, it's all barely holding together right now." He nodded, understanding in his gaze. "I get it." "And Crawford won't stop," Lucas added. "He's already pushing for a formal review of your hiring process." "Let him," Sarah said, her voice firm. "I earned this job. I won't let him, or anyone, make me question that again." After Lucas left, she tiptoed into her children's room. James's cast glowed softly in the dark, already scribbled with doodles from her and Olivia. A small thing, a fractured bone, but it reminded her just how tight the rope was that she walked every day. Her phone buzzed with an email. Crawford again, calling for a full audit of her department. Another buzz, Lucas this time assuring her he would handle the pushback. Sarah closed both messages without replying. Tomorrow she would fight Crawford. She'd face her complicated feelings for Lucas. But tonight she just wanted to be here, with her children, with herself, with the quiet purpose that first set her on this path. On her desk, a half-finished business law essay waited. Beside it, of her kids smiling from a frame, and just next to that, her presentation notes, where Lucas's scrawled encouragement still lined the margins. 3 worlds: motherhood, education, career, pulling at her all at once. But for the first time since Marcus left, Sarah felt strong enough to hold them all. The scent of distant wood smoke drifted in the air as she hurried across the University of Colorado campus. Her business ethics midterm had run late, and she was already behind, picking the kids up from their after-school clubs. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lucas. Their dinner plans for the following evening were confirmed. 8 months into their carefully paced relationship, Sarah and Lucas had found a rhythm that worked. Quiet dinners after the kids were in bed, moments stolen between meetings, and occasional weekend lunches with Olivia and James. The children had grown to like Lucas, slowly drawn in by his patient attention and sincere interest in their lives. Just last weekend, he spent nearly 3 hours helping James assemble a model rocket for science class, never once checking his phone or showing signs of restlessness. The memory made Sarah smile. Until she turned the corner to Olivia's dance studio and froze. Marcus was standing near the entrance, looking almost exactly as he had the day he left, except now there were faint creases around his eyes and a tentative slope to his shoulders she'd never seen before. Their daughter sat beside him on a bench, her expression animated as she talked. "What are you doing here?" Sarah's voice came out sharper than she intended. "It's not your day." "Daddy came to watch me dance." Olivia grinned, completely unaware of the tension crackling between her parents. "Can he come get ice cream with us?" Marcus raised his hands slightly, a conciliatory gesture. "I was nearby, thought I'd surprise her." "Nearby?" Sarah let out a dry laugh. "Your office is on the other side of town, and Danielle, she had the baby last week." Marcus's expression tightened. "A boy," he paused. "That's part of why I came. We need to talk." "Don't call me that." She snapped when he used her old nickname. It no longer belonged to him. "Olivia, sweetheart," she said, turning to her daughter. "Go grab your things. We need to get your brother." Once Olivia disappeared inside, Sarah turned to Marcus. "You can't just appear like this. We have a schedule for a reason." "I know," he said, rubbing his hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made something twist inside her. "I know, and I'm sorry. But things are different now. Danielle, she's not who I thought. The baby, everything. I made a terrible mistake. Marcus, I miss our family. I miss you." The words hit her like a faded echo from a version of herself she no longer recognized. There was a time she would have crumbled to hear them, nights she cried into her pillow, aching for this exact apology. But now, standing before him, she felt only a dull, tired ache. She'd already grieved this loss. She had already let him go. Words that once would have broken her now landed dull and lifeless. Words she had ached to hear in the early days of his absence, now too little, too late. "You miss the convenience," she said flatly, "of having someone hold your life together while you pulled it apart." "That's not fair, I'm trying." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've seen how much you're carrying now. With the kids, school, work, let me help. Let me come home." Home. The word caught in Sarah's throat. "You mean the place where I cried myself to sleep for months? Where our children learned that their father could walk away without a second thought? That home doesn't exist anymore, Marcus. We don't exist anymore. Mom, look what Miss Renee said about my pirouette." Olivia came bounding out of the dance studio, a glowing report card in hand. The drive to James's school was unbearable. Olivia chatting away to Marcus in the back seat, while Sarah gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles paled. By the time they arrived at the science center where James attended his after-school robotics club, Marcus had somehow finagled an invitation to stay for dinner. "Just to talk," he'd said. "The kids deserve that much." James's eyes lit up at the sight of his father. Then dimmed when he noticed Lucas standing beside Sarah's car. The crash of past and present made Sarah's pulse spike. "I thought we were getting Chinese," James said, confusion coloring his voice. Lucas took in the scene with quick composure, his face unreadable. "I can come back later." "No." Sarah's tone left no room for argument. Marcus was just leaving, actually. Marcus didn't budge. "I was invited to dinner. Family dinner." The emphasis on family wasn't lost on anyone. Olivia and James exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier excitement now uncertain. "Hey, why don't you two show your dad your new projects?" Lucas offered smoothly. "Give your mom and me a minute to talk." As the kids guided Marcus inside, Lucas turned to her. "You okay?" "No." Sarah exhaled, her voice shaking. "He says he made a mistake, that he wants to come back." "And what do you want?" The question caught her off guard. In all their months together, Lucas had never pressed her, never asked for more than she was ready to give. But now, standing there, faced with his steady concern, she found her answer. "I want," her voice steadied, "I want to move forward, not backward. I want my children to see that happiness doesn't mean settling. I want," her eyes locked with his. "I want you, Lucas." The truth tasted clean and certain, not rushed, not impulsive, just real. She had mourned her old life long enough. There was no resurrecting it, only honoring it by choosing better now. The words felt like breathing after drowning. "But my kids." "Your kids need steadiness," Lucas said gently. "And Marcus showing up like this, dredging up old pain and false hopes, that's not it." Before Sarah could reply, her phone rang. Richard Crawford. His name glared across the screen. "Don't answer it," Lucas warned. "He's been sniffing around, trying to turn your divorce into a weapon." "Let him dig," Sarah said quietly, declining the call. "I'm not ashamed of where I've been or where I am." The evening that followed pushed every boundary of her patience. Marcus reminisced about old memories while the kids hung on his every word. Lucas kept a respectful distance, never overstepping, but close enough that Sarah felt the strength of his presence. Unspoken truths lingered in the air, thick and heavy. After Olivia and James were finally tucked in, Marcus lingered in the kitchen, nursing a cup of untouched tea. "We could try again," he said. "For them, for us." "There is no us," Sarah replied softly. "There's only who we used to be, and who I am now." She glanced toward the living room where Lucas sat waiting. "And who I am now doesn't need you anymore." "Because of him?" Marcus asked bitterly, jerking his chin toward the hallway. "You've known him, what, 8 months? We have 12 years of history." "Exactly," Sarah said, lifting her chin. "History." She stood straighter. "What we had ended when you chose someone else. I've spent the last year rebuilding, piece by piece. I won't let you unravel that just because your new life didn't turn out the way you expected." "The kids need their father." "They have their father," she said firmly. "On the days the court appointed. What they need now is to see their mother happy, whole, strong enough to choose her own direction." After Marcus left, Sarah found Lucas in the living room, his laptop open but untouched. He shut it when she sat beside him. I should have warned you he was back, she said, her voice low. You didn't owe me that. Lucas reached for her hand, tracing light, slow circles across her palm. You don't owe anyone explanations. Not me. Not Marcus. Not Crawford. You've earned the right to choose your own future. She leaned into him, letting herself rest against the calm certainty he carried. Stay tonight. His brow lifted. Are you sure? Sarah nodded. The kids need to see that love can be kind, respectful, chosen. She looked into his eyes. I'm choosing you, Lucas, if you'll have me. His kiss said everything. Later, as they lay together, wrapped in warmth and stillness, Sarah let her thoughts drift to all the decisions, ones made for her, ones she'd once surrendered, and now the ones she had reclaimed. Tomorrow would bring Crawford's scrutiny, Marcus's lingering regrets, the never-ending push and pull of work, school, and motherhood. But tonight, in Lucas's arms, she knew she had chosen well. Her phone lit up one last time. Marcus, this isn't over. She deleted it without reading more. Some chapters needed to stay shut so new ones could begin. The woman staring back at her in the full-length mirror barely resembled the one who had collapsed to the floor in her foyer 18 months ago. Sarah smoothed the satin of her midnight blue gown, a quiet smile tugging at her lips as she remembered Lucas's reaction when she chose it. Tonight was the Anderson Group's annual charity gala, its most high-profile event of the year, and as the newly appointed director of operations, she had a vital role. Mom, you look like a princess. Olivia gasped from the doorway, already in her pajamas. Behind her stood Madison, their regular sitter, grinning knowingly. Thank you, sweetheart. Sarah knelt carefully, mindful of the satin hem of her gown. Remember, I'll be home late, but I'll come kiss you goodnight, even if you're asleep. Will Lucas be there? James called from his room. Yes, she replied, but as my boss, not my date. That distinction mattered now, especially after Crawford's failed attempt to discredit her by insinuating favoritism. She and Lucas had agreed on firm professional boundaries, especially at public events. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. Heard you've got a big speech tonight. Good luck. Their relationship had slowly morphed into something resembling cooperative co-parenting, especially after he'd stopped pushing for reconciliation. The birth of his son, Michael, had softened some of his rougher edges, though Danielle's passive-aggressive remarks still had a sting. The drive to the Denver Grand Hotel felt surreal. A year ago, Sarah was knee-deep in divorce filings, custody disputes, and Crawford's audit into her career progression. Now, she was minutes away from unveiling her department's groundbreaking efficiency model to a crowd of over 300 industry leaders. Lucas waited in the hotel lobby, striking in his tuxedo, but maintaining a respectful distance. Ready? Born ready. Her confidence wasn't perfect, but it was real now. The ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Denver's top executives and influencers mingled in tailored suits and glittering gowns. Sarah moved with quiet authority, fielding questions about her team's success and sidestepping thinly veiled curiosities about her connection to the CEO. Crawford loomed near several conversations, his influence now diminished, especially after his own past missteps had surfaced publicly. Ladies and gentlemen, the evening's host called from the stage. Please welcome our Director of Operations, Sarah Whitman. A hush fell. The spotlight followed her as she stepped forward, head held high. Lucas's gaze met hers from the front row, pride in his eyes. Crawford sat farther back, his jaw tense. But neither man's expression defined this moment. 18 months ago, Sarah began, her voice calm and clear. I thought I'd lost everything. My marriage was ending. My confidence had collapsed. My future felt like a blank void. I was someone's ex-wife, someone's mother, someone's employee, but I'd forgotten how to be me. The crowd leaned in, drawn not just by her title but by her truth. What I didn't realize then, she continued, was that sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what you're capable of building. This evening isn't just about KPIs and workflow diagrams. It's about transformation, of teams, of systems, and of self. She outlined her department's solutions, the savings, the measurable gains, but under the corporate narrative flowed a deeper one. Change, she said, isn't only about new software or updated charts. It's about the courage to confront what's broken, the strength to release what no longer fits, and the vision to build something better. In business, in life. True success starts with valuing your own worth. even when others try to devalue it. Her eyes landed on Crawford. There will always be people who dismiss your achievements, who say you don't belong, who whisper that you didn't earn it. To them I say, watch me rise, watch me succeed. Watch me prove that the greatest power doesn't come from tearing others down, but from rising on your own. The applause that followed was thunderous. Later, during the dinner service, Crawford approached her table. His tone was carefully neutral. "Impressive speech," he said. "Perhaps I misjudged you." "No," Sarah replied evenly. "You judged me exactly how you intended. You just didn't expect me to be stronger than your judgment." He gave a terse nod and backed away. As Lucas passed behind her, he briefly rested a hand on her shoulder, a silent gesture that carried more meaning than words. Pride. Support. Something deeper. As the gala wound down, Sarah stepped out onto the hotel's terrace. The Denver skyline shimmered across the lake, bright and expansive, a symbol of everything that once felt unreachable. Lucas joined her, keeping a polite distance, even here. "The board's impressed," he said. "You've silenced the last of the doubters." "I didn't do it for them," Sarah answered, turning to meet his gaze. "I did it for the woman who thought her life had ended 18 months ago. For my children, who needed to see their mother stand tall. And for myself, the self I've finally learned to respect." "I love you," Lucas said softly. "Not because you're strong, though you are. Not because you're successful, though you've earned every bit of it. I love you because you are unapologetically, authentically you. Even when you're overwhelmed or sleep-deprived or questioning everything. Especially then," he grinned faintly. "But I won't lie, watching you put Crawford in his place tonight was particularly attractive." A text buzzed in Madison. She'd sent a photo. Olivia and James fast asleep, still in their dress clothes. They'd insisted on dressing up to celebrate their mom's big night. "Go home," Lucas whispered. "Be with your kids." Sarah smiled. "We have all the time in the world." "We do," she replied, "because this time I'm choosing this life, not falling into it, not holding on out of fear or guilt, choosing it fully." The drive home was calm, her notes tucked away in her bag, untouched. Outside the window, Denver glided past, the city where she'd lost herself, found herself, and learned how to love herself again. Olivia and James slept just as Madison's photo had shown them. Olivia in her sparkly dress, James in his clip-on tie. Sarah bent to kiss them both gently, savoring the soft, familiar scent of childhood. In her office, her diploma from the accelerated business program rested in its folder, ready to be framed beside her recent promotion letter. Photos lined the wall, her kids, her team, her milestones. And on her desk sat a single frame holding her printed speech, where Lucas had scribbled in the margin, "You never needed saving. You just needed to remember your strength." Sarah slipped out of her gown and into her favorite chair, the one that had carried her through sleepless nights and quiet victories. She didn't feel unfinished anymore. She felt home. Her phone lit up with messages. A flood of congratulations from friends. A single red heart emoji from Lucas, and one from Marcus. "You've changed everything, including how I understand strength." She smiled, no need to reply. Tomorrow would bring more demands, balancing her advancing career with motherhood, nurturing her relationship with Lucas while preserving professional lines, and continuing to prove her worth in a high-stakes corporate world. But tonight, in the quiet of her home, surrounded by reminders of every step she had fought for, Sarah Whitman finally felt whole. Not because of love or praise, not because of awards or accolades, but because she had learned the one truth that mattered most. True strength doesn't come from never falling. It comes from standing back up, every single time life knocks you down. She had stumbled in every imaginable way, emotionally, financially, spiritually. There were nights she doubted everything, from her worth to her future. But somehow, piece by piece, she'd built something steady from the wreckage. Something real. She reached for her laptop and opened a new file, the beginning of her next big project. The future stretched before her, wide and open, and this time she would walk into it with purpose. Because she had earned the right to choose, and she was ready for whatever came next. The woman who once stood trembling in her foyer had been replaced, not with someone unbreakable, but someone who no longer feared being broken. Because now she knew how to rebuild, and how to rise. Dear friend, life doesn't always fall apart with thunder. Sometimes it unravels slowly, in moments so ordinary we barely notice until we're left holding the pieces. But as the Stoics say, it's not the events themselves that shake us, it's how we see them. Sarah's journey wasn't about avoiding heartbreak or hardship. It was about facing it head-on, about choosing purpose instead of resentment, about becoming someone who didn't need to be saved because she finally remembered her own strength. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you're there now. And if so, I hope her story reminds you that you don't have to be unbreakable. You just have to keep showing up, again and again. That's where the power is. That's where transformation begins. If her story spoke to you, even in a small way, go ahead and tap that like button. Share it with someone who might need this reminder too. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourself. You matter more than you know.